You know, like I said earlier on, one of the problems, one of the disincentives for arbitration in most African countries is that after you finish arbitration, there is such an intense degree of judicial involvement that you can be in court for anything for 15 years trying to get an arbitration award enforced, and that's a disincentive. But now the bill for the first time introduces a concept by which the parties can have a second arbitral process that is called an appellate arbitral process, which will last for nothing more than 3 months. And after that, the scope for going to court is severely restricted. You know, so the parties can only go to court if there was a public policy problem, or if the case was not the kind of case that should have gone to arbitration at all in the first place. Okay, now outside those two instances, the parties can't go to court. And the process of restricting the extent of judicial intervention is a process that's been confirmed as constitutional in a number of decisions and in a number of practices that go on right now. Yes, and the Senate passed that bill 2 weeks ago. It's before the House of Representatives now, and hopefully it will receive presidential assent soon if the House of Reps pass it, and then that will become the new regime. The second thing that's come out of the process, you know, started by the Lagos Chamber of Commerce's dispute management program, has been the idea that we also need an administration of civil justice bill, because commercial disputes fall under the category of civil justice. And essentially, what does that? What's the notion of a civil justice bill? It recognizes the fact that you can't reform individual courts in an isolated way. So you can't say, well, the problem is in the High Court, and we will try to reform the High Court rules. It recognizes that the entire judicial process is a spectrum that starts from the High Court and goes up to the Supreme Court. And to be able to reform that, you need an overarching legislation, a legislation that affects the entire spectrum. And so very soon, hopefully, there's a process in place to draft, you know, the concept of an administration of civil justice bill. And if it is considered fit for, you know, for introduction into the Senate, I'm sure very soon somebody will consider it, you know, necessary to put this on the agenda of the Senate.
What's the role of lawyers, or is it the NBA in all of this? Because you've talked about the need to draft the administration of civil justice bill.
Indeed, again, that's a very good question. The bill, the idea, the whole idea for the bill is currently being driven by the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and the Nigerian Bar Association's Judiciary Relations Committee in the Lagos branch of the Nigerian Bar Association. Lawyers are in fact playing a role, not just on the platform of the Nigerian Bar Association, but on the platform also within the context of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to make this become a reality. There will be a lot of events coming up in the coming months to sensitize the business community, to sensitize the judicial community, to sensitize the legal community about the need for us to have a bill of this nature. You know, Nigeria currently runs what we call an adversarial system of justice. Now, what that means essentially is that, you know, it's almost like a game of Ludo or draft or chess. And at the end of the day, victory really goes to who can play the smartest game. And my perspective is that that's not the best way to do justice. And in most developed countries of the world, they've actually transited from an adversarial system, not necessarily to an inquisitorial system, which is at the other end of the spectrum, but rather a more collaborative system. In other words, I'm plaintiff and you are defendant, but we must work together to try to achieve a common result. Now, what that means, obviously, is that our culture needs to change. Our ethics and our culture needs to change. And we can use legislation to promote that process. But at the end of the day, you know, if the people, it's the people who are going to make a system work. When I say the people, I mean right from the clients, the business people, the lawyers, the judges, the legislators. There needs to be a complete, you know, paradigm shift. People need to appreciate that where we are today is not right. You know, nobody wants to do, people generally business people generally tend to prefer not to do litigation in African countries. But, and so that's why you'd see a contract entered into by two Nigerian companies choosing England as their jurisdiction, right? Because there's not too much confidence in the system. Now we need to transform that, and to transform that, we need to change our culture. Now a platform is being established, an advocacy platform, to drive that message, to drive that philosophy. That, you know, and so it's going to be working in a collaborative way with all the relevant stakeholders, the legislature, the lawyers, the judges, and the business community itself. So we are going to be having training sessions for in-house counsel to basically inculcate this shift from, you know, seeing dispute resolution as a game of chess, as opposed to a process, a collaborative process to achieve justice and equity.
Ultimately, what's the benefit of all of this for Nigerians?
Well, the benefit essentially, I think, is going to be if we can achieve this transformation in people's attitude to dispute resolution, then we are going to begin to see more efficient systems. And indeed, for the economy as a whole, I mean, disputes actually cost the economy a lot of money. Whole projects are tied down. Then there's, of course, even the invisible exports that's involved when, you know, work that Nigerian lawyers can do is being done in foreign courts with foreign lawyers, right? There's a whole lot of wealth that is being exported that could actually have contributed to the Nigerian gross domestic product, you know. So there are so many ways in which, you know, adopting a totally new culture to litigation and dispute resolution will actually help the Nigerian economy.